Today we're focusing on China. Japan on Tuesday released its annual Defense of Japan report, expressing concern over Chinese naval vessels' activities in the Pacific Ocean. The report noted that China is likely to expand its sphere of maritime activities and conduct operations and training as routine practices in waters near Japan, including the East China Sea, the Pacific Ocean and the South China Sea, which Tokyo is increasingly worried about. So, what exactly is the cause of the Japanese worries? What are the priorities in the current maritime policies of China, and what are the main sensitive issues in this policy? We are discussing these and other issues with our guest speaker, Alexander Gabuev, Deputy Editor-in-Chief of Kommersant Vlast magazine and expert in Chinese foreign policies. However, before we proceed with our discussion, just let me give you some more details of the news. So, Japan releases the Defense White Paper each year to state its view of the surrounding security environment and its defense policy. The 482-page report comes at a time when tensions between China and Japan over the Chinese maritime policies have again been running high. The Japanese report suggests that China is likely to expand its sphere of maritime activities and conduct operations and training as routine practices in waters near Japan, which, of course, Tokyo is increasingly worried about. For its part, China has dismissed Japan's claims of a China threat, calling them irresponsible and groundless. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Hong Lei says that Japan attracted widespread attention by making various excuses for its continuous arms expansion and the reinforcement of its military alliance with the US, as well as distorted facts about regional security issues in recent years. So, like we can very well see, the tensions and the rhetoric are quite heated.
Yes. Well, actually, the Japanese have every reason to be worried because the Chinese not only dispute the Senkaku Islands now, which in Chinese is Diaoyu, but there are also new claims for the Okinawa Island.
Okinawa,
yes, because in the 18th century and before that, there was a Ryukyu, the kingdom of Ryukyu. There was an independent kingdom of Ryukyu on the Okinawa Island, which paid tribute both to China and to some Japanese samurai, because there are samurai clans. And only when China became weak, the Japanese managed to enforce its control over the Ryukyu. So about a couple of years ago, some Chinese students started to claim that Okinawa must be returned to Chinese motherland.
Well, who's listening to students?
Yeah, but now scientists, experts on international relations started to mention Okinawa as historically Chinese territory. The Japanese also claim part of Kuril Islands, and they also claim Korean Tokto Island, and actually the Chinese demand all those territories in the South China Sea based on some very ancient maps, historic records, and those international pacts, international treaties don't play much, are not very seriously taken.
But definitely the Okinawa case is hopeless, isn't it?
Well, who knows? Because, history is a very complicated thing, and it's very important to start demanding something. And then if the situation changes and, one country becomes weak and another country becomes strong, it can be changed, because actually Okinawa was Chinese.
But do I get it right that there is a series of island disputes between China and its neighbors?
Yes.
A whole range of island disputes.
A whole range, yeah. And, normally China starts to remember about some islands when there is a need to remember. Let's remember, for example, 1969, when a small island in the Amur River called Damansky became a focus of a Sino-Soviet conflict, which could result in a war. So I think that all those events around Senkaku Islands or Diaoyu in the East China Sea and the situation in South China Sea is also somehow connected with the changing political situation in China. and around China.
Are you pointing to the coming change of guards in the government of China? Or?
Yeah, it is one of the factors. I think that China becomes really strong. China spends a lot of money on the military, and the Chinese military are now playing more and more active role in politics. We should remember that 2 members of Chinese Politburo are army people, and 3 members represent military industry, while, for example, foreign policy establishment is not represented in the Politburo at all. So in the 25 people Politburo, the voices of military establishment is heard. And there are some people in the Politburo who are less militant. And there were rumors that even Chairman Hu Jintao was criticized about a year ago at some Politburo meeting for his mild reaction to the Senkaku situation, which arose 1 year ago. Mm-hmm. So the situation develops, you know.
Oh, well, it's very interesting.
And I think that partially it is a problem connected with China, another is a problem connected with America, because America is coming back to the Pacific.
Now, I suggest I might listen to our guest speaker, Alexander Gabuev, and just to remind you, he's Deputy Editor-in-Chief of Kommersant Vlast magazine and expert in Chinese foreign policies. What are the priorities of the current maritime policy of China?
So officially, China wants to defend its territorial integrity. But the problem is that there are many disputed areas around the Chinese maritime borders. One of them is large problem with Japan about the Senkaku Islands, which is the Japanese name for them, or Diaoyu Islands, which is the Chinese for them. Major problem is the natural shelf, which possesses lots of hydrocarbon resources. Both countries try to negotiate a way to explore them by national companies, and then made sign some production sharing agreement, but didn't reach compromise. And right now this issue became not only economical but also geopolitical on the one hand. On the other hand, it became a matter of domestic policy both in Japan and in China. And same goes for the largest problem, the South Chinese Sea, where China has ambitions to gain large chunk of the territory, which is currently controlled by Vietnam, Philippines, and other countries which have territory, mainly islands, there in the South Chinese Sea. The argument goes around oil and gas resources on the shelf, but it's also a question of pride, of some nationalistic feelings both at home and abroad in China and in these countries. And it's a very complicated mix because on one hand we have China, we have these countries there, and we have an outside power, U.S., which is present there by its navy, and which announced that maritime security in the South Chinese Sea is a national priority for the United States. And the United States are there to secure free trade, free passage of trade ships around the South China Sea. So it's a very complicated picture.
Do I get it right that something like in the late 1990s, China adopted a 50-year-long strategy?
That's right.
Could
so Chinese have many published and both unpublished documents. It wants to develop its navy, but main target is, again, not only to project power overseas, but also to defend its territory. So, but here we come to the definition what is actual territory of the PRC. So this is the main line of the argument.
You're listening to the Voice of Russia.
This is Burning Point, looking into the maritime strategy of China. And just to remind you, we're talking to our guest speaker, Alexander Gabuev, who is Deputy Editor-in-Chief of Kommersant Vlast and expert in Chinese foreign policies.
But the problems with the maritime borders, with those islands, they all started only maybe a couple of years ago. And those maps, the Chinese maps with all those islands shown as Chinese territories, they were published during the Kuomintang years, during the early communist years. So why only recently this problem becomes so important?
I think there are three major reasons. One of them is that China, in military terms, became much stronger than it used to be, both in Kuomintang era, when China had many problems at home, Kuomintang regime and Chiang Kai-shek government in Nanjing had to combat warlords and so on, so it really didn't have enough power to defend the territory it claimed there in South China Sea. Same goes for the Mao Zedong government and also the Deng Xiaoping government and so on. During Hu Jintao era, China developed huge military and navy capabilities, and right now is the most advanced military power in the region after the United States. So it can really bully its neighbors and project more claims that it had the authority, to support. This is one reason. Second reason is increased conflict with the United States. So before, China was much weaker, seemed to be an attractive destination for foreign direct investment, was not top of the United States priority. But right after, and actually shortly before, Barack Obama announced this Pivot Asia program, reshifting focus of the United States foreign policy to the Asia-Pacific region, making basically containing China or sending China a signal that America is there to stay and it will not allow to bully the neighboring states and especially its allies like Japan, Philippines, increasingly also Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia and Singapore. So this conflict was not so intense. But right now, because so many countries, especially Philippines, feel that United States is increasingly standing behind them, they really behave much more aggressive as they didn't behave like 2 or 3 years ago. And so the conflict intensifies. And reason number 3 is that the domestic situation in People's Republic of China is becoming more and more complex. So it's still an authoritarian regime where the government has full control over the economy and the political life, but the civil society is growing, the elite has different factions, as a recent case of sacking Chun-Sin party chief Bo Xilai showed. The military has larger say over politics, so there is both elite politics, both rise of the middle class, and the party has much larger challenge to prove its legitimacy. One of the pillars of its legitimacy right now is increasing this nationalistic sentiment in its own population. And South China Sea seems to be a perfect reason to, wrap yourself in a red patriotic flag and say, we are the government of the people, we want to defend our territorial integrity, and that's what we do. So people will reshift its focus of attention from domestic problems like corruption, increased unemployment, food security, and so on, to some more, geopolitical patriotic issues. So I think these are 3 basic factors.
Today is the 85th founding anniversary of the People's Liberation Army. And yesterday there was an unprecedented press conference in Beijing. A Defense Ministry spokesman, Mr. Geng Yangshan, mentioned that a regular combat readiness patrol system has been established in waters under China's jurisdiction. And he also said that a military garrison was recently established on the Sansha in South China Sea. So it looks like the situation is deteriorating quickly. Do you think there is a possibility of actual military conflict either with Japan or with the Philippines or Indonesia?
I think the probability is there. So right now it seems to be the war of nerves, and all the sides try to increase pressure on each other. But I think right now the leadership of China as the largest party and the most mighty one is still very pragmatical, and it realizes that the consequences of a possible war would be fatal for stability of the China's economy, because of course United States will not stay somewhere, but it will definitely interfere on the side of smaller countries. So I think right now China is still very pragmatic and will try to avoid provocations and stop at the red line. On the other hand, you know that provocation can happen unexpectedly. Much depends on the human factor, and nobody knows, for example, if mistakenly a Chinese military ship attacks some oil vessel in the South China Sea for Petro-Vietnam, for example.
Yeah.
What happens next? That's really nobody knows right now. Third is that we hear voices from Beijing, mainly aired by a press which airs some military views, that China has huge, or actually short, limited window of opportunity to teach these small countries in Southeast Asia a lesson and start short war against Vietnam or Philippines and really show who is like the big brother in the region.
Yeah.
So right now these voices are not so viable, but this is increasing in the Chinese elite, and this is very worrying.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gabuev.
And just to remind you, our guest speaker was Alexander Gabuev, Deputy Editor-in-Chief of Kommersant Vlast and expert in Chinese foreign relations.
Burning Point.
We're looking at the prospects of the Chinese maritime policies and its relations with its neighbors. So another interesting issue to me, Yuri, is, like Mr. Gabuev said, the prospects of further standoff between China, its neighbors, and the United States are, to put it mildly, quite alarming.
Yes.
But how do you see that? Do you think that there might be some kind of a red line which neither America nor China would cross?
I think there is a red line, but this red line is set by the politicians, by the top military people. But, you know, there are small military vessels with their...
well, talking about provocation.
Not even a provocation, but, you know, things happen.
Let's look at bigger policies.
As far as the big policies are concerned, I don't think that both sides want a real military conflict. But it is very close. Because, for example, in this Senkaku Island problem, Foreign Secretary Clinton already stressed several times that provisions of the Japan-America Security Treaty covers this territory. So the implications are evident. And America also promised sort of help to the ASEAN nations who also have disputes with China. And, you know, America is creating a network of new military bases in Southeast Asia.
New military bases?
New military bases. We should remember deployment of U.S. Marines in Darwin, Australia, deployment of littoral combat ships in Singapore, resumption of military ties with Indonesia, a launch of U.S.-led Trans-Pacific Partnership Economic Pact that excludes China. Well, American Defense Secretary visits Vietnam, and there are prospects of Americans using the Cam Ranh Bay, the famous naval base, great naval base. So I don't like this situation. I think the red line exists, and we are so close to the red line.
But as far as I understand, the new leader of China is known for his mild approaches. He is not aggressive, he is not belligerent, he is soft-spoken, and he seems to be rather inclined to develop ties with the West, not confrontation.
You know, Katya, we don't know much about Mr. Xi Jinping. And anyway, the change in Chinese Politburo will take place only in September or even October. And then it will take some time for him to impose control over the party And he'll become head of the military commission of the Politburo only next year. And so many things can happen before...
Within a year's time.
Within a year's time. Things happen all the time. For example, the Chinese naval vessel was grounded in one small island in South China Sea, which Philippines consider to belong to them. And then additional forces were sent to help this ship. So it could be seen by the Philippines as a start of military operations.
But Yuri, you're traveling to China and you're talking with the Chinese intellectuals. What is the sentiment with them? How do they feel about the United States, about those disputes, territorial disputes? What is the general sentiment?
You know, there are so many points of view. The Chinese are not they used to be during the Mao Zedong times, and some of them are critical of Chinese leadership's politics in the South China Sea. But they are mostly unanimous in their hatred towards the Japanese, and they believe that Japan is a defeated nation and it had to pay for Japanese aggression against China. So the Japanese are in no position to say anything about the Senkaku Islands.
What about the United States?
The United States, you know, many Chinese intellectuals are pro-American. They like America. They praise American role in Chinese history from the 19th century, during the Second World War, and they are very, very startled at this new aggressive policy of Obama. They say, look, he's a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and he starts this encirclement of China, containment of China, and he pushes China to a very awkward position where China will have to spend a lot of money and to get prepared for the worst. Because Americans are known to be serious people. They don't play games.
Well, sure. On the other hand, the situation with China somehow resembles the late years of the USSR, when we were pushed into the arms race.
Yes.
We had to spend money on the military projects, and that somehow prevented the authorities from developing the consumer market, to use modern terms. I believe that the Chinese are doing their homework. They're very diligent students, and they can see the example of the USSR just before their eyes. What do you think would be their reaction to the mounting aggression on the part of the United States?
I think I should quote a newspaper called Global Times, which is an English version of the Communist Party newspaper Zhenmin or People's Daily. Mm-hmm. So this article was published during the Rimpak naval maneuvers. Mm-hmm. You remember the Chinese were not
the
invited.
Recent ones. Yes.
Yeah. So it writes, China should get used to being left out in the cold by the US. This is normal, as China is becoming the world's number 2. The cost of a country's rise is that it will lose some sympathy, which will be replaced by vigilance and precaution. China should take it easy. And then it's a very important line. China is likely to maintain its rapid development and help form a new international sphere, which intersects with that promoted by the US.
It is really amazing how the United States manages to turn friends into foes.
Yes. It's a talent.
It's an exceptional talent. This is going to be the problem of the Far Eastern nations, of the Asian-Pacific region, which is another jewel in the globe, and is it going to be devastated?
Yes, and there is a Chinese professor, a quite famous one, Zhou Fang-in. He works for the Institute of Asia-Pacific and Global Strategy Studies in the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. So he wrote a story in the Global Times newspaper saying that the Chinese neighbors repeatedly provoking and offending a rising neighboring power are not wise, because they are likely to be the biggest losers if any conflicts break out. The US can find excuses to just walk away.